health department and our analysis do not at this time permit us to break out ehrlichiosis and babesiosis, but the vast majority of these diseases in southeast Connecticut are Lyme disease, with just a small numbers of ehrlichiosis, which is also a bacteria, and babesiosis, which is a protozoa. But we focus generally on Lyme disease. I would turn your attention to the two pieces of paper marked Preventing Tick-Borne Diseases. The principal message that I want to convey tonight is about our plan working with you to lower these rates over the next 3 to 5 years so that, if nothing else, East Lyme and Waterford residents do not bear a disproportionate burden of the disease in southeast Connecticut. To that end, as you see on the first sheet, there are 3 prevention steps. The first is prevent exposure. The second is to prevent the bite. The third is to prevent illness. I want to speak very briefly about each of those. Preventing the exposure to ticks means controlling or eradicating the habitat for ticks. This can be done. Ticks are endemic in this area. We're not going to eradicate them. Beginning in late April and May, when temperatures go above 40 degrees, the tick population will soar. But it will particularly soar in what are called the danger areas. And those are where the grass meets the woods, where the soccer field meets the stone wall, where the playing field meets the woodpile. These are the danger zones in shaded, moist areas where the ticks grow in abundance. You can control those by protective borders 3 to 4 feet wide with a simple mulch. You can protect school children, people who walk through parks on trails, by simple protective measures that ticks will not cross. We also want to protect tick bites, and there are many ways to do that. Some of the most obvious are the careful use of the appropriate chemicals. Pyrethrin on the clothing will stop ticks. DEET on the skin, all used age appropriately, will stop ticks. One of the most important ways is to check the clothing and remove the ticks when you come inside. That's one of the reasons why you keep hearing about wear light-colored clothing. It's not because the light-colored fends them off, it's because you can see ticks. On dark clothing, it's almost impossible to see the nymphal tick. I've given you a list of things here which you can read at your leisure. The third one is to prevent the illness after a bite. And almost everybody does this wrong. It's because of some things that were put out in the 90s. You do not grasp the body of the tick with your tweezers. You grasp the head only and pull gently the tick out. What is also not well known is that it is incredibly efficient to be vigilant when coming in, because the tick does not begin its nasty work for 16 to 24 to 36 hours even after it is attached to the body. The tick will move over the body for hours, seeking a warm and moist place, underarm, groin, ears. You have a day to remove a tick. So it bears watching, to be clear. And you can also get rid of almost all of them by tossing that clothing in a dryer and turning it on high for 10 minutes. They will die. Lastly, it has been found in the last 10 years, increasingly through research, that the most effective way to remove ticks is what people are going to do in large measure anyway when they come in from serious play, and that's take a shower. Ticks will wash off in soap and water. They'll wash off in soap and water. And if you're going to come in from a long day out or gardening or serious play, taking a shower And washing the ticks off is incredibly effective and very simple. And it's not something you have to put out massive health education messages about because people bathe. Secondly, I'll call your attention to the second sheet called Looking Ahead. We want to help you with this. As I mentioned before, tick barriers are an extremely effective way. Done properly with planning, they can be no cost or low cost. When you're cleaning and renovating your trails through walking zones, when you're renovating a ball field, when you're doing anything with recreation areas, it can be a fairly simple matter to make a border, especially if it's in the sunlight, because they do not like sun. A 3-foot border of mulch in the sun will effectively deter almost all ticks. So we want and urge you to consider best practices for tick eradication and reduction by simple, low-cost or no-cost adjustments to recreation areas and trails. We will join with you. We would like to meet after the first of the year with your Parks and Recreation, your Public Works people in a joint meeting, and offer our services to survey your most public areas that see the greatest foot traffic and identify areas that can be amenable to no-cost or low-cost interventions to dramatically bring down these rates. Simultaneously, we can work with you for the placement of simple signage at the most risk areas where these barriers go up, simple signage that alerts people this is a tick zone and here's what you should be doing. So that wherever people walk in these areas that are endemic with tick clusters, they see and are reminded of these simple things. As by way of illustration, I gave you, you'll see the next handout with the color with the squirrel and the tick on the thumb to show you the relative size, and that's why it's useful to wear light colored clothing when gardening or walking about in the woods. The next handout, entitled Wildlife Control Information, shows you what it looks like when a deer carries 130 ticks in its ears. Deers do not cause Lyme disease. Deers transport ticks all over the place, as you know where the deer go. Deers do not cause Lyme disease. They transport. The next page, I show you with that blue bulky thing in the middle, and those small orange cylinders. This is called a 4-poster device, and I'm including this to alert you that there are more sophisticated and there are more expensive remedies for tick-infested areas. In this case, if you recall that picture you just saw of the deer with those 130 ticks in its ears, these are feeding zones where the deer, as you see, have their faces down, and by going for that food, they are rubbing their neck and ears against those chemically treated posts and killing the ticks. There are three demonstration areas in New England now which are testing these 4-post mechanisms in order to test their ultimate efficacy. And lastly, the handout I have are a series of pages for you to take home to disseminate regarding the subject that I've just discussed. You'll notice on the first page, it is the black-legged deer tick, which is responsible for the Lyme disease. That's what it looks like. That's what it's called. On the next page, under the heading of Lyme disease, you'll see a clear picture of the ordinary, not exclusive, but the ordinary so-called bullet rash that often, very often, will signal that a bite has occurred. But the most important thing to remember is that A, this can be prevented by working with the habitat in low-cost or no-cost interventions, and B, the tick bite can be controlled and removed by showering. My prop is, I own one of these, developed by the U.S. Army. They're extraordinarily effective. They're soaked with a chemical. This is called Insect Shield. They're expensive. They work up to 70 to 90 washings. They remain effective. And I have also socks that are made of the same material. They're available commercially. The Army has shown them to be effective. That's one of the things that has been scientifically verified numerous times. So you can protect yourself and your children from getting Lyme disease. I'm delighted to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Salisbury, for this very informative report. And I like your idea of offering to work with the Public Works Director and the Public Works Department, the Park and Recs Department. I think that makes some good sense to try to keep an eye on. I hope you'll introduce yourself to Mr. Begaw on the way out so that you become familiar. And I think we can do whatever we can to work to prevent the spread of this. So thank you for that. Does anybody in the board have any questions? Or is this on your website, and is this information available to the public if
Not
they
yet.
happen to miss our
Yeah.
riveting Board of Selectmen meeting this evening?
I will do that.
Because it
And
would, it would be useful if we could then link to it on the town
Yeah,
website.
then we could.
It's a great idea,
Yeah, very good.
especially as we get closer to the spring, obviously.
Yes, that's why I was suggesting that after the first of
Yeah,
the year,
yeah.
we'd get rolling in.
Just grab that.
That after the holidays, when everybody is less preoccupied, we can talk about a campaign for April and May and June
Yeah.
to make a substantial dent in these numbers, or to begin to make a dent in these numbers.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? Thank you very much for the great job that you do and your organization under your leadership. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the appointment to SCARA, the Director of Public Works, Joe Begaw. Joe is here. Bill Scheer is acting in this capacity on a temporary basis, and now that the Director of Public Works is the usual representative to SCARA, and I will be the alternate. So Mr. Begaw is here for consideration this evening if you have any questions regarding him, but this has been a historical Public Works Director post.
I'll put the motion on the table. Move to appoint Joseph Begaw of 19 Adawan Avenue, Niantic, Connecticut, as a representative to SCARA, SCRRRA, through January 4th, 2016.
Second.
I'm not sure if we can we appoint through January 16? Because we have not been sworn in, I believe this will have to be through January 2014, when the appointments will be redone, because this is the last meeting of the current board. And although we have all been reelected by charter, we must become a new board of the same people after the installation ceremony, which will be December 2nd at 3 o'clock. So the reason we asked for this appointment now instead of waiting was because there may be a meeting coming up that may need Mr. Begaw's attention. So if I might ask the maker of the motion to change this to 2014.
Do you think the January 4th date should be altered as well, or
We have to see when the term would normally end.
We have.
Why don't we just put this off to the next meeting and have Joe go on your behalf, and then let's just do it let's do it the first meeting that we all are back in December. And if there's a meeting in between, he can go get his feet wet, but, and then it'll be the whole deal.
Joe has a comment.
Bill would have to go because I'm not allowed to vote on anything there.
it's a voting
I'm
issue?
not-
Yeah.
You could go with him though, right?
Oh, I could.
Right,
Bill
right.
could go along.
The two of you could go. I mean, I just,
We went to last meeting. I've already been to a meeting and I've had the stuff, and if that's what the board wants, we can take Bill along, but I can't vote on anything there.
right. All right, so between the two of you though, you could get it done, and then we could just do it.
The meeting that I would ask the date change would be to January 8th. 2014, if we were going to consider it. I was answering one question before I got to the second.
Okay, well, it's totally up to you whether you want to do the whole thing or not.
And then we'll bring forward all of the other appointments that we normally do at that
It's-
time, but this gives us a couple,
It seems silly to send two people to a meeting if we can vote tonight to authorize Joe or, appoint him through that January 8th, 2014. I feel
And then we could
should do
just,
so,
then
and
we'll
in
just
the
push it
new year.
along to the 16th when we do everybody else's.
Exactly.
yeah, right.
Right.
Then there'll be a natural, yeah.
Okay.
I'll amend my motion to January 8th, 2014.
And second agrees.
Okay. Further discussion on this item? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. The next item is the authorization to sign the Yale Trail Conservation License Agreement. This item, as you know, the town purchased the Darrow Pond property a couple of years ago. We had formed a committee to, the Open Space Committee on the Darrow Pond. There is actually 300 acres that was purchased, plus or minus 200 acres were to be set aside for open space, and 100 acres, plus or minus, to be set aside for future municipal use, most likely for water, because we have 3 wells on the property. And we had contemplated with the regional interconnection, the first water tank would go there. Although when the designers came, it was determined there was a better and more appropriate and less expensive location. I still maintain that there will be a water tank on that property once this regional interconnection has been fully operational for a couple of years as a future storage capacity for our town. But that being said, the conservation easement was a requirement of the purchase. We have a specific time in which to act on this. Attorney Wainwright is here and has monitored the proceedings of that Open Space Committee. Gary Gaishel, our town planner, was the town ex officio to that Open Space Committee and has participated in such. And we have that license agreement in front of you. You've had an opportunity to look at it. I would ask if Attorney Wainwright would just kind of make a small overview of the process, and then we'll open it to the board for consideration.
I'm happy to do so. I think the agenda item is
What?
the license agreement with Yale, which is the property.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, you skipped.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I
Yale
miss?
license
I'm
agreement
sorry. Did I
and moved on
misspeak?
to that
I thought I
one.
dozed
Please
off or
forgive
something
me.
like that a
Please
little bit.
forgive me.
Okay.
Please forgive me.
Oh,
Please
boy.
forgive me. Did I say Yale that whole time, or did I say?
No, you
Darrow's Pond?
didn't. You were
Okay,
indeed
good.
talking
So,
about the Darrow Pond.
I'm glad I didn't confuse it. I just missed it and was reading the discussion action
Right.
item on the agenda in the wrong spot.
I'm
So
sorry.
forgive me for that. We'll hold all of what I just said for the next item on the agenda.
Can we just replay the tape?
Yeah.
Right.
All right, so now I guess where we are is the authorization to sign the Yale Trail Conservation License Agreement, which contemplates moving trails from the property at Darrow's Pond through the property that's owned. But why don't you explain that? All right, thank you.
Good evening.
This is Attorney Collins from, that was handling this.
Yes, Tracy Collins from Waller Smith and Palmer, the town attorney's office. We had spoken, this is the Yale Trail Conservation License Agreement. We had spoken about this at a prior meeting, and basically, the town is planning on entering into this agreement with Yale University at the Outdoor Recreation Center on the property it owns in the north end of town. And this will enable town residents to have a walking trail up through the property. You'll see that this trail will be open to the general public. I don't know if your maps are in color.
Yes.
The line
Oh,
of
mine is.
the Yale Trail Agreement would run across the blue line. And the plan on your maps, do you have, I
Yep.
believe Ms. Cheeseman has it. Oh, some people do.
I have them.
So this is the trail that the Yale Hiking Club, the East Lyme Hiking Club and Mr. Carlson's group have been working with the town planner, Gary Gaishel, to connect all of these walking trails throughout East Lyme. It would go through the state forest, and this is a piece of property that the hiking club has been looking at to put their blue trails on. Our main concern was that the town would have liability. We would not have been protected under the recreational use statute, but the agreement, we've been in discussions with Yale for a long time. They've agreed to amend it. Our insurance carrier is satisfied that the town would be protected from any liability, and therefore, this is the current version for Mr. Formica's signature.
Okay. And this does connect the trails at the Darrow Pond site. It does, there is a trail going from Darrow Pond into Yale. There's also additional sets of trails that go up from other areas. So,
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
We have not been involved with the trail at all,
Yeah.
except with regard to
To the
this
liability.
agreement with Yale, because this is not town-owned property or state-owned property. This is private property owned by Yale University.
and then the reason that we started this was because of the recreational liability statute that is under the state of Connecticut that calls for it to be a specific term.
We were
town-
concerned that the town would be liable if anyone were injured on those hiking trails, because initially only Yale was protected and not the town.
Correct. Thank you. So that's where we are. Any discussion on this item? Comments?
We put a motion on the table, we can discuss if necessary. Resolve, the first selectman is authorized to execute and deliver in the name and on behalf of the town a trail conservation license agreement with Yale University to construct and maintain a pedestrian walking footpath to be used by the general public on the property known as the Yale Outdoor Education Center, and to sign and deliver such other documents and take such other actions as may be necessary or desirable to implement such agreement.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Is there further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Attorney Collins. Now I guess is time for the item that I had started a little early. Would you like me to repeat all of that
No,
stuff that
no,
I said?
no,
or
let's
can we
have
all
Attorney
remember?
Wayne
We're gonna be
I
fine.
think
Right up
he-
to the microphone.
I think the only one suspect with memory issues would be me, so I'll watch the tape and
The eldest.
see what I'm saying.
Well,
So this
hopefully
is-
I'll get you up to speed.
Yeah.
Kristen Wainwright from Tobin Carberry, Special Counsel to the town on Darrow Pond property. Good evening. For your consideration tonight is the approval of the final conservation easement, as we've touched on at this meeting. When the town bought the property in 2011, the town did agree with the Trust for Public Land, the entity from which the town purchased the property, that approximately 200 acres of the property would be dedicated to conservation. It would do this through a conservation easement or a deed restriction, and the town has identified the Friends of Oswegatchie Hills Nature Preserve, a local land trust, to hold a conservation easement on the property. The terms of the conservation easement are based on input that was provided from the Trust for Public Land and also the Darrow Pond Open Space Committee, which met for approximately a year and a half and gathered information about the property, considered appropriate uses of the property, and presented their recommendations to the Board of Selectmen earlier this year. That committee was Jack Hogan, Beth Gruber, Ruth Rulega, Dwight Staub, Carol Strafacci, Norm Bender, Art Carlson, and Nancy Thiebolt. Also on that committee were Gary Goschel and Dave Putnam as staff liaisons from the town. The committee spent a lot of time on this easement, and the final easement is based in large part on their recommendations. A couple of issues that have come up tonight, and I can address quickly for the board and open to any further questions that you might have, is there are existing easements on this property. And this easement is going to be, by the terms of the easement itself and also by operation of law, subject to all of those existing easements. What that means is, to the extent that there are parties who hold rights under those easements, those cannot be affected by this easement. The other issue that has come up for the board's consideration is the issue of available grant money through the Connecticut DEP. And this is an issue that the town has explored. Unfortunately, in 2011, when the town purchased the property, there was no grant program open through the DEP. At this time, the DEP Open Space and Watershed Grant Program is not available for properties that have already been purchased. So unfortunately, that does preclude the possibility of grant funding to reimburse the town for some of the expenses that were incurred in purchasing this property. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from Attorney Wainwright, or how
Just
would you like to
answered mine.
proceed?
No, that was, I think you answered the question most of us just had.
So basically, going forward with this easement has no effect on the availability of DEP grants because as we've already purchased the property, we would not be
Eligible.
eligible.
Correct. It is an exclusion criteria if the town purchased the property actually prior to January 31st of 2014 for the current program.
Any further comments?
No, that answers a lot of the questions that were great questions that were brought up, so good, thank you.
Certainly.
How would you like to proceed?
I'll make a
Move the
motion.
motion.
Resolved that Paul M. Formica, first selectman of the town of East Lyme, is hereby authorized and directed to sign that certain conservation easement to be granted by the town to the Friends of Oswegatchie Hills Nature Preserve Incorporated pursuant to the town's obligations under that certain option agreement with the Trust for Public Land dated August 5th, 2011 as amended, and letter agreement dated December 2nd, 2011, and to do and perform all acts and things which he deems necessary or appropriate to carry out the terms of the conservation easement.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Having a second, is there further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. The next item is continued discussion of Public Safety Committee. I would like to be able to bring more information than I've been able to gather, so if we could put this off.
Yeah.
Continue.
Carry it.
Appreciate that.
Sure.
I am finding that there are a couple of different models out there, and I want to kind of bring the best one.
Okay, and so I can mention it, I attended the library board meeting, and Lisa Timothy indicated that as the library is involved in emergency, not emergency management, but as a shelter,
Shelter.
they would like to be included or have some, be kept in the loop with regard to the formation of the Public Safety Committee.
Okay, yeah. Actually, the library, she means the building.
The
is a-
building,
Is a
exactly.
secondary shelter,
Shelter, yeah.
regional shelter, but, yeah, which makes sense, so we'll get some information out there. All right, thank you. Next item would be ex officio reports. Mr. Siri, Mr. Wilson, which
No,
side
I-
do you want to start?
Harbor Management, lack of a quorum last night, so they did not have a meeting.
I'm good.
I attended the, I'll go in order, the zoning committee meeting of November 7th. A lot of the applications were continued. There was some discussion on sign subcommittees. But basically, it was a fairly brief meeting, and they set the calendar for 2014. I attended the meeting of the East Lyme Library Board Monday evening. Again, they're in the process of putting their budget together for next year. Lisa reported on, I think for the first time, there's going to be a capital request for painting. She's in the process of getting quotes. They're doing some repair work on rugs and furniture, and they're entering into something called EDGE, which is a program which assesses the library's capabilities with regards to supplying information technology to the town. And it takes a survey, what the needs are likely to be, and sees if the town, the library